Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It is January 13th, 2026, and we are going to read from Genesis chapter 14 and Matthew chapter 13. All right, so in Genesis, Lot has decided to go live near Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham has gone the opposite direction to live. God just made that promise to Abraham that his descendants are going to be something special. But what happens to Lot? Well, first thing that happens to Lot is once he gets to his destination is a war breaks out, or a skirmish, I guess would be more along the lines of what's happening here. Each of these different city states or regions would be powerful enough that they could pick on their neighbors and get their neighbors to pay them tribute to not pick on them. And then eventually the neighbors that were a little bit weaker would get stronger and they would go back and pick on the other people. And that's what's going on in this region. And that just so happens that Sodom and Gomorrah are on the weaker side. They want to rebel against the person they're paying tribute to, and he comes and he wipes them out and takes everything and everybody away, including Lot. And Abraham's going to have to go save him. So let's go ahead. We're going to read Genesis chapter 14. And it came to pass in the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Arioch, king of Eleazar, Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, and Tidal, king of the nations, that they made war with Bera, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shineab, king of Admah, Shemabar, king of Zobalim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. All these joined together in the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea. 12 years they served Chedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year, Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him came and attacked the Rephaim in Ashtaroth, Karanim, the Zuzim in Ham, the Emim in Sheba, Kiriathim, and the Horites in their mountain of Seir, as far as El Paran, which is by the wilderness. Then they turned back, and they came to En Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and attacked all the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites who dwell in Hezazon Tamar. And the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar, went out and joined together in battle in the valley of Siddim against Chedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of nations, Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Eleazar. 4 kings against 5. Now the valley of Siddim was full of asphalt pits, and the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled. Some fell there, and the remainder fled to the mountains. Then they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all the provisions and went their way. They also took Lot, Abraham's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. Then one who had escaped came and told Abraham the Hebrew. That's the first place where we see someone called a Hebrew, son of Eber. For he dwelt by the terebinth tree of Mamre, the Amorite brother of Eshcol, and the brother of Aner, and they were allies with Abram. Now when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his 318 trained servants who were born in his own house and went in pursuit as far as Dan. He divided his forces against them by night, and he and his servants attacked them and pursued them as far as Hobah, which is north of Damascus. So he brought back all the goods, and also brought back his brother Lot, and his goods, as well as the women and the people. So Abram was well known as a good fighting man, so they didn't go to any other countries. They went straight to him to settle this. 17, and the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shaveh, that is the king's valley, after his return from the defeat of Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him. Then Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was the priest of God Most High, and he blessed him. And he said, Blessed be Abram of God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And he gave him a tithe of all. Now Melchizedek, we don't know anything else about him other than he's the king of Salem, which is Jerusalem. He's a high priest, a servant of God Most High, and that's the same title Abram gives to God, God Most High. So they're worshiping the same God. and Abram understands that God gave him this victory, and understands that Melchizedek is a priest of that God, and he gives him a tenth of goods. Which goods we're not really sure. A tenth of all of his own goods, a tenth of the plunder, something. He gives to God, essentially, is what we want to see. He's recognizing that God gave him the victory. Verse 21, now the king of Sodom said to Abraham, give me the persons and take the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have raised my hand to the Lord God Most High, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will take nothing from a thread to a sandal strap, and that I will not take anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich, except only what the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men who went with me, Aner, Eshol, and Mamre. Let them take their portion. So Abram says, I don't want any of what was here. Just what my guys ate to go get this. All we wanted to do was save Lot and bring it back. Everything else is yours. I don't want anything to do with you guys, essentially. I don't want to be said that I got my wealth from anyone but God. Let's go ahead. We're going to go to Matthew 13. Jesus is going to start teaching. This is his third big discourse in Matthew. He's going to start teaching with some parables. Parables are just stories. They're not true stories. They're stories, illustrative stories. Think of last time you took a test and you had a train going from Chicago and it left at 3 and it was going 70 miles an hour, and the train from New York left. There were really no trains. It's just story to illustrate the problem that you were trying to solve. Here, very common teaching tool to give them a story that they can relate to teach them something a little bit deeper. And with Jesus, usually there's the story and there's a point that story makes that's very common. It's very easy to spot. That's not the point of the story. He wants you to go a little bit deeper and see the kingdom connection that he's trying to make. And in a lot of his stories, there's even deeper depth to, okay, future, this is how it's going to be after I've been crucified and risen. So let's go ahead. We're going to start with Matthew chapter 13. On the same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the sea, and great multitudes were gathered together to him, so that he got into a boat and sat, and the whole multitude stood on the shore. Then he spoke many things to them in parables, saying, behold, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seed fell by the wayside, and the birds came and devoured them. Some fell on stony places where they did not have much earth, and they immediately sprang up because they had no depth of earth. But when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprang up and choked them, but others fell on good ground and yielded a crop, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. That's usually how we would end the parable. And if you're paying attention and you're following me, you'll get the meaning. And he's going to explain it to us here. And the disciples came and said to him, why do you speak to them in parables? And he answered and said to them, because it has been given to you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. Mysteries of heaven will be the things that we see in the Old Testament and the kingdom, that if we study our Bibles, we'd have seen it already. But he's revealing it to these people, and he's saying, you know what, the reason you didn't get it before is because God didn't want you to have it before. Wisdom comes from God. Understanding comes from God. And why is that true? Because for whoever has, to him more will be given, and he will have abundance. But whoever does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. Therefore I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. And in them the prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled, which says, hearing you will hear and shall not understand, and seeing you will see and not perceive. For the hearts of this people have grown dull. Their ears are hard of hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, lest they should understand with their hearts and turn, so that I should heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For surely I say to you that many prophets and righteous men desired to see what you see and did not see it, and to hear what you hear and did not hear it. Therefore hear the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, then the wicked man comes and snatches away what was sown in his heart. This is he who receives seed by the wayside. But he who received the seed on stony places, this is he who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no root in himself, but endures only for a while. For then tribulation or persecution arises because of the word. Immediately he stumbles. Now he who receives seed among the thorns is he who hears the word, and the cares of this world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. But he who receives seed on the good ground is he who hears the word and understands it, who indeed bears fruit and produces some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. And some details in there. Usually the star of the parable is Jesus or God. So he's the sower who's sowing his word. And then we said there's also that third meaning of, okay, he's talking about when he sends his apostles out and they're going to spread the word. They're going to receive that same idea that some people are going to get it, some people are going to think it's great for a little while and fall away, but it's the ones in the good earth that are going to receive the word and grow in the word. Verse 24, another parable he put forth to them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while men slept, his enemy came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. But when the grain had sprouted and produced a crop, then the tares also appeared. So the servants of the owner came and said to him, Sir, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have tares? He said to them, an enemy has done this. The servant said to him, do you want us then to go and gather them up? But he said, no, lest while you gather up the tares, you also uproot the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and at the time of harvest I will say to the reapers, first gather together the tares and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. So someone has planted weeds in with the wheat, and he's saying, you can't pluck up the weeds or you pluck up good wheat. Let it grow until we can distinguish what's wheat and what's weeds, and then we'll get rid of the weeds. Why does God allow sin? And we saw that in Genesis a couple days ago, that he understands that it's our nature and that we've got to deal with it as best we can. He wants us to repent, like we saw Abram sinned in Egypt by lying about whether Sarah was his wife or not. But when he repents, he comes back to God, and God says, okay, there you go. But ultimately, that's the idea. Sin has got to take its course in the world, because if God gets rid of sin, he's got to get rid of all of us. When he flooded out his creation, Noah was saved, but sin comes right back through Noah. When he was in the Garden of Eden, he could have wiped out sin by wiping out Adam, but then there's none of us. So there's that theme of sin. Why is it allowed? Well, because it has to be dealt with. And the only way to deal with sin is to wipe it out completely. And if we won't let go of the sin, he has to wipe us out. So we're going to do this plan of salvation that was there from the beginning until we can get to that time of judgment where God can judge and say, no, you're wheat, you're tares. And another parable he put forth to them here in 31, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is the least of all the seeds. But when it is grown, it is greater than the herbs, and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and nest in its branches. Another parable he spoke to them, the kingdom of heaven is like leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal till it was all leavened. Now we've seen leaven used as a symbol before. Back in Genesis, it's that symbol of evil. A little bit of sin is all it took to grow into the big sin, to leaven the whole loaf. Sin is a mustard seed. It's just a little tiny thing. You know what? God told Adam, don't eat from that tree. And when Adam said, where's God? And he went and ate it. And then God came and he said, well, I didn't eat it. It was this person. And then we have Cain who's murdering. And then we have Lamech who's murdering multiple people. And then we have to have the flood at Noah, because everyone is wicked. But Jesus is turning that around. And he's saying, you know what? Yeah, that's sin that's going to do that. But you know what's going to conquer that? That little mustard seed of faith in me. That little leaven of faith in me, because that's going to grow and overcome the sin. Verse 34, all these things Jesus spoke to the multitude in parables, and without a parable he did not speak to them, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet, saying, I will open my mouth in parables, I will utter things kept secret from the foundation of the world. Then Jesus sent the multitude away and went into the house, and his disciples came to him, saying, explain to us the parable of the tares of the field. He answered and said to them, he who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. Again, he's usually the main character in these, especially if it's a king or a master. If it's a servant or a slave, then that's usually referring to us. Verse 38, the field is the world, the good seeds are the sons of the kingdom, but the tares are the sons of the wicked one. The enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are the angels. Therefore, as the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of this age. The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all things that offend and those who practice lawlessness, and will cast them into the furnace of fire. There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth, and the righteous will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears to hear, let him hear. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field which a man found and hid, and for joy over it he goes and sells all that he has, and he buys that field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant seeking beautiful pearls, who when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it. You get the truth of the kingdom. That should be the biggest treasure you have. Doesn't anything else matter once I get the truth of the gospel in me. Verse 47, again, the kingdom of heaven is like a dragnet that was cast into the sea and gathered some of every kind, which, when it was full, they drew to shore. And they sat down and they gathered the good into vessels, but threw the bad away. So it will be at the end of this age. The angels will come forth, separate the wicked from among the just, and cast them into the furnace of fire. There will be wailing and gnashing of teeth. So we've got the tares and the wheat and this parable, and they're similar. They're almost saying the same thing, but one is saying it as an example of farming, which a lot of people at that time would understand, and this one is telling it as fishermen, which a lot of the people would understand. That's the point of the parables, is it's giving them a frame of reference that they should be able to understand this if their hearts and their ears and their eyes are open to what Jesus is saying. If they're not, then it's just a story about gardening and a story about fishing. Verse 51, Jesus said to them, have you understood all these things? They said to him, yes, Lord. And he said to them, therefore every scribe instructed concerning the kingdom of heaven is like a householder who brings out of his treasure things new and old. So getting the parables right is very important to understanding what Jesus came to teach us. Verse 53, now it came to pass when Jesus had finished these parables that he departed from there. When he had come to his own country, he taught them in their synagogue, so that they were astonished and said, where did this man get this wisdom and these mighty works? Is this not the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary, and his brother James, Joses, Simon, and Judas? And his sisters, are they not all with us? Where then did this man get all these things? So they were offended at him. So the answer should have been, well, he must have got it from God. But they don't want to see that. They want to deny him and say, well, Now we don't, the way they mention his mother and their brothers is that they're with him. The way they mention Joseph is as if he's not there anymore. Last time we saw him was when Jesus was 12. So somewhere between 12 and 30, it seems like Joseph has died. Why would the gospel writers not tell us more about that? Because they're writing about Jesus and not his family. Let's pick it up at 57 again. So they were offended at him. But Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his own country and in his own house. Now he did not do many mighty works there because of their unbelief. May God bless the reading of his word. May God bless you. Bye.